The rain hammered against the diner windows on Route 66, somewhere between Flagstaff and Albuquerque, as Emma Carson stared at her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. She'd been staring at reflections a lot lately, in mirrors, in storefront windows, in the darkened screen of her phone, trying to piece together the fragments of a life she couldn't quite remember before the age of 12. Emma worked the breakfast shift at Rosie's Diner, a job she'd held for the past 3 years since turning 18. The regulars knew her as quiet, hard-working, a little distant. What they didn't know was that she woke up most nights in a cold sweat, chasing dreams that felt more like memories, dreams of 2 other girls laughing in a bedroom painted pale yellow, dreams of a woman's voice singing lullabies she couldn't name. Before we continue with Emma's story, I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the channel and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Your support means everything. Now, let's get back to the mystery. The woman who raised her, Carol Brennan, had always been vague about Emma's past. A troubled family situation, she'd said. A fresh start was what Emma needed. Carol had homeschooled her in their trailer outside Gallup, New Mexico, rarely letting Emma venture into town. When Carol died of a heart attack 2 years ago, Emma found herself suddenly alone, with nothing but a shoebox of documents that raised more questions than answers. The birth certificate listed her name as Emma Brennan, born in Albuquerque in 1994, but the paper felt wrong somehow, too crisp for something supposedly 21 years old. There were no baby pictures, no school records from before Carol, no family photographs, just emptiness where a childhood should have been. It was a Tuesday morning in late October 2023 when everything changed. Emma was refilling coffee for a couple of truckers when she overheard them talking about a podcast they'd been listening to. Something about cold cases and missing children. One of them had his phone out, showing his companion a website. "These kids just vanished," the older trucker said, shaking his head. 3 little girls gone without a trace, right out of their beds in the middle of the night. Emma's hand trembled as she poured the coffee, nearly spilling it. Something about the conversation made her skin prickle. "Where'd this happen?" his companion asked. "Kansas. Little town called Marysville, back in 2006. The mom woke up and all 3 of her daughters were just gone. The FBI investigated for years. Nothing." Emma set down the coffee pot, her heart hammering. 2006. She would have been 12, the same age where her concrete memories began. She couldn't explain the compulsion that drove her to the public library that afternoon. She told her manager she was sick and caught the bus into Gallup, her hands shaking the entire ride. At the library, she settled at a computer terminal and typed in the search terms with fingers that didn't feel like her own. Marysville, Kansas, missing girls, 2006. The screen filled with results. Emma clicked on the first news article, dated June 15, 2006. The headline read, "3 sisters vanish from Kansas home in brazen midnight abduction." Her eyes scanned the text, absorbing details that felt simultaneously foreign and achingly familiar. Rebecca Martinez, a single mother, had put her 3 daughters to bed on the night of June 14, 2006. 12-year-old Lily, 9-year-old Sophie, and 7-year-old Maya. When Rebecca woke the next morning to get them ready for school, all 3 beds were empty. The front door stood open. There were no signs of struggle, no ransom notes, no witnesses. The FBI had investigated the case as a potential parental abduction at first, suspecting the girl's father, Daniel Martinez, who'd lost custody 2 years prior due to substance abuse issues. But Daniel had a solid alibi. He was in a court-mandated rehabilitation facility in Colorado at the time, with dozens of witnesses and security footage to confirm his presence. Emma scrolled down, her breathing shallow, and then she saw it. The photograph was grainy, scanned from what must have been a school picture. A girl with light brown hair and green eyes smiled at the camera, missing one front tooth. The caption read, "Lily Martinez, age 12, at the time of disappearance." Emma's vision blurred. She enlarged the image, her hands shaking so badly she could barely control the mouse. The girl in the photograph had a small birthmark on her left cheek, just below her eye, exactly where Emma had one. The same slightly crooked front teeth that Emma had before she'd gotten braces in high school. Braces that Carol had paid for in cash at a dental clinic that didn't ask many questions. The resemblance was impossible to dismiss. The shape of the face, the spacing of the eyes, even the way the girl's left eyebrow arched slightly higher than the right. It was like looking at a photograph of herself from an age she couldn't remember. Emma's breath came in short gasps. The library suddenly felt too small, too hot, the fluorescent lights too bright. She fumbled for her phone and took several photographs of the screen, her hands trembling so violently that half the images came out blurred. She found more articles, each one adding to the puzzle. The investigation had been massive. The FBI had deployed dozens of agents. Volunteers had combed through thousands of acres of farmland surrounding Marysville. Rebecca Martinez had made tearful pleas on national television, begging whoever had taken her daughters to bring them home safely. Daniel Martinez, the father, had been released from rehab and immediately joined the search efforts. Though suspicion continued to follow him despite his alibi, the parents' tumultuous relationship became tabloid fodder. Some articles implied that Rebecca might have been involved, though she was never named as a suspect and had cooperated fully with investigators. As years passed with no leads, the case had gone cold. By 2010, the FBI had scaled back their active investigation, though the case remained open. The last article Emma could find was from 2016, a 10-year anniversary piece where Rebecca Martinez, aged considerably and worn down by grief, still held out hope that somewhere, somehow, her daughters were alive. Emma printed everything she could find, spending the last of her week's tip money on printer fees. She stuffed the papers into her backpack and stumbled out of the library into the fading afternoon light, her entire world tilted on its axis. Back at her apartment, a studio above a laundromat, Emma spread the printouts across her bed. She stared at the photograph of Lily Martinez for hours, holding it next to her driver's license photo. The similarities were undeniable, but doubt gnawed at her. Could this really be her, or was she seeing patterns where none existed, desperate to fill the void where her early memories should be? She thought about Carol Brennan, the only mother she'd ever known. Carol had been strict but not unkind, protective to the point of paranoia. She'd taught Emma to read using old paperback novels, taught her math using recipes and household budgets. But she'd also been secretive, evasive whenever Emma asked about her past. "Some things are better left buried, honey," Carol would say, her face taking on a strange, distant expression. "What matters is that you're safe now. You're loved. That's all you need to know." Emma remembered one incident from when she was 14. She'd found an old newspaper in the garage while looking for a hammer. It was from 2007, a national publication. She'd started to read an article about missing children when Carol had snatched it away, her face pale with fury. "Where did you find this?" Carol had demanded. "In the garage. I was just... Don't go through my things. Do you understand me? Don't ever go through my things." It was the only time Carol had ever yelled at her. The incident had frightened Emma so much that she'd never ventured into the garage again. Now, in the quiet of her apartment, with the truth potentially staring her in the face, Emma wondered what else Carol had been hiding. Had the woman she'd called mother for her entire conscious life actually kidnapped her? It seemed impossible. Carol had been a church-going woman who volunteered at the local food bank, who'd never even gotten a parking ticket. But then again, Emma had to admit she'd never really known Carol at all. The woman had no friends, no family who visited, no photographs of her own past. She'd appeared in Gallup in late 2006 with a young girl in tow, and no one had questioned it. Emma barely slept that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to force her mind back beyond the wall that seemed to exist in her memories. She could remember being 12, 13, growing up in the trailer with Carol. But before that, nothing solid. Just impressions, feelings, fragments that slipped away like smoke whenever she tried to grasp them. The yellow bedroom, the singing voice, and something else, something that came to her in the pre-dawn hours, the smell of chocolate chip cookies baking and two smaller girls laughing, calling her Lily. By the time weak sunlight filtered through her apartment window, Emma had made a decision. She needed to know the truth, whatever it might be. She called in sick to work again, knowing she was probably going to get fired, but finding she didn't care. Some things were more important than a minimum wage job at a roadside diner. She spent the morning researching, diving deeper into the Martinez case. She found a Facebook page that Rebecca Martinez still maintained, a memorial page for her missing daughters. The last post was from 3 months ago, on what would have been Lily's 29th birthday. "Still waiting for you to come home, baby girl. Your sisters too. Mommy loves you forever." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She stared at the profile picture of Rebecca Martinez, a woman now in her mid-50s with streaks of grey in her dark hair and deep lines etched around her eyes. Did Emma recognize her? She wanted to, desperately searched her fractured memories for any spark of recognition, but found nothing concrete. She scrolled through the page, finding photographs Rebecca had posted over the years. Pictures of 3 little girls at various ages, always together. Lily, tall for her age, with that distinctive birthmark. Sophie, with darker hair and a gap-toothed grin. Maya, the youngest, with pigtails and a stuffed rabbit that appeared in nearly every photo. There were birthday posts for each girl, every single year since they'd disappeared. 17 years of grief documented in digital photographs and heartbroken messages. Emma's throat tightened as she read them, tears blurring her vision. She found video clips too, home movies that Rebecca had uploaded. One showed the 3 girls performing a dance routine in their living room, laughing when Sophie tripped over her own feet. Another captured them at a lake, splashing in the shallows while Rebecca's voice behind the camera urged them to be careful. Emma turned up the volume, listening intently to the girls' voices. Did Lily sound like her? She couldn't tell. Her own voice had deepened over the years, and besides, she had no recordings of herself as a child to compare. But there was something in the way Lily moved, a certain tilt of her head when she laughed that made Emma's chest ache with a familiarity she couldn't explain. She needed help. She couldn't do this alone. Emma thought about going to the police, but fear held her back. What if she was wrong? What if Carol had been her biological mother after all, and Emma was just a desperate woman, seeing connections that didn't exist? She'd make a fool of herself, dredge up painful memories for a grieving mother for no reason, and if she was right, if she really was Lily Martinez, then Carol Brennan had been her kidnapper, and Emma wasn't sure she was ready to accept that truth. Despite everything, Carol had been the only family she'd known, the only person who'd cared for her. The thought of retroactively transforming all those memories into something sinister made Emma feel sick. She decided to start smaller, to gather more evidence before taking any irreversible steps. Emma drove Carol's old pickup truck, the one possession of value the woman had left her, to the Gallup Police Department and requested copies of Carol Brennan's public records. There wasn't much. Carol had registered the truck in 2007. She'd gotten a New Mexico driver's license that same year. Before that, nothing. It was as if Carol Brennan hadn't existed before 2006. Emma's next stop was the trailer park where she'd grown up. It was a depressing collection of weathered mobile homes on the outskirts of town, home to people who'd fallen through society's cracks. The elderly manager, Pete Davidson, was the same man who'd been running the place since Emma was a child. "Emma Carson," Pete said when she approached his office, a surprised smile crossing his weathered face. "Haven't seen you in months. How you been?" "I've been okay, Pete. I wanted to ask you something about Carol, about when she first moved here." Pete's expression softened. "Still miss her, huh? She was a good woman, your mom." "She was," Emma said, the words feeling like a betrayal. "Do you remember when she arrived? I was so young, I barely remember." Pete scratched his chin, thinking, "Let's see, must have been late 2006, around Thanksgiving if I recall. She showed up with cash for 6 months' rent up front, said she was looking for a fresh start. Had you with her. Sweet little thing, but scared of your own shadow." "Did she say where she came from?" "Utah, I think. Or maybe Idaho. Somewhere out west. Said she'd left a bad situation, an abusive husband. I didn't pry. Lots of folks here are running from something. Did I seem like I knew her, like she was my mum?" Pete's brow furrowed at the odd question. "Well, sure. You called her mum, stuck close to her. Though now that you mention it, you were awfully quiet those first few months, clingy. Carol said you'd been traumatized by the divorce. That's why she was homeschooling you, to give you stability." He peered at Emma more closely. "Why are you asking all this?" Emma forced a smile. "Just trying to piece together some memories." "Thank you, Pete." She left before he could ask more questions, her mind racing. Carol had claimed to be fleeing an abusive husband, but Emma had never seen any evidence of a father, no photographs, no child support payments, no attempts at contact. It was a convenient story, the kind that would make people sympathetic and unlikely to ask probing questions. Back in her apartment, Emma pulled out the shoebox of Carol's documents again, examining everything with new eyes. The birth certificate that listed Emma Brennan, born in Albuquerque. Emma held it up to the light, looking for any signs of forgery. She had no idea what she was looking for, but something about the document felt off. She found Carol's death certificate, the medical bills from her final hospitalization, and at the bottom of the box, something she'd overlooked before, a small tarnished key with no label, no indication of what it might unlock. Emma turned the key over in her fingers. It was small, the kind that might fit a padlock or a safety deposit box. She'd never seen it before, had never noticed it among Carol's sparse possessions. Where would Carol have hidden something that needed locking away? The garage, the place Carol had forbidden Emma from exploring. The trailer had been sold after Carol's death to settle debts, but the garage was a separate structure, basically a large storage shed behind the trailer lot. Emma had kept paying the minimal monthly fee for it, out of habit, storing Carol's remaining possessions there because she hadn't known what else to do with them. She drove to the trailer park as the sun began to set, the key clutched in her hand. The garage was at the far end of the property, half hidden by overgrown scrub brush. Emma hadn't been inside it in over a year. The main padlock opened with the key Pete had given her years ago, but inside, among the boxes of old clothes and dusty furniture, Emma found what she was looking for, a small metal lockbox shoved behind a stack of moldy encyclopedias. The tarnished key fit perfectly. Her hands shook as she opened the box. Inside was a collection of items that made her blood run cold. A driver's license for Carol Brennan from Illinois, dated 1998, with a different face. A woman with blonde hair and harder features. A stack of cash, several $1,000s in worn bills. A burner phone with a dead battery. And underneath it all, 3 small items that made Emma's vision swim. A child's plastic bracelet with the name Lily spelled out in beads, a school photo ID card for Lily Martinez from Marysville Elementary School, and a stuffed rabbit with one ear torn off. The rabbit. Emma's breath caught. She remembered that rabbit. Not clearly, not as a specific memory, but as a feeling, a sense of safety and comfort. She'd had nightmares as a child about losing a rabbit, about searching for it in the dark. Maya's rabbit, the youngest sister's constant companion in all those photographs. Emma sank to the floor of the garage, the items spread before her, undeniable proof of what she'd been desperately hoping was just paranoid speculation. Carol Brennan had taken her, had stolen her and her sisters from their beds in the middle of the night and torn apart a family. But where were Sophie and Maya? Emma's mind reeled with the implications. If Carol had taken all three sisters, where were the other two? Had they been separated, given to different people, or had something worse happened? She needed to find out. She needed to know what had happened that night in June 2006, and why Carol had chosen her over her sisters. The guilt crashed over her in waves. While she'd been living a relatively normal life in New Mexico, her mother, her real mother, had been drowning in grief, never knowing if her daughters were alive or dead, and Sophie and Maya, her sisters. Emma pressed her hands to her face, trying to summon any memory of them, but found only that frustrating wall of emptiness. She gathered the items from the lockbox, handling them like precious artifacts. The photo ID showed a younger version of the girl from the missing poster, confirming what Emma already knew in her bones. She was Lily Martinez. Everything else was a lie Carol had constructed. As night fell, Emma sat in her truck outside the garage, staring at her phone. She'd pulled up Rebecca Martinez's Facebook profile again, her finger hovering over the message button. What would she even say? "Hi, I think I'm your daughter who was kidnapped 17 years ago." It sounded insane, even though she had evidence, but she couldn't message Rebecca, not yet, because Emma realized with a sinking certainty that if she announced herself, it would become a media circus, news vans and reporters and police investigations, and if Sophie and Maya were out there somewhere, living under assumed identities like Emma had been, the attention might drive them further into hiding, or worse, might alert whoever had taken them that their secrets were being uncovered. Emma needed to find her sisters first, or at least she needed to try.